Travelers, beware. A major border shutdown set for September, and the changes coming to the state's busiest border crossing. Plus, stepping down, the man who has been on the forefront of the effort to improve the lives of veterans for more than 20 years, and his thoughts on the state of homeless veterans in San Diego.
We're very fortunate to have, this beautiful facility right next to the ocean. People want to come out here that aren't necessarily our core horse racing folks.
Counting down to opening day at the Del Mar racetrack. The club leaders who are trying to buck the trend of declining attendance nationwide. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. Without consensus on a replacement, the U.S. Senate may move forward with a repeal-only vote of the Affordable Care Act. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says the Senate will vote early next week. Replacement was doomed last night after two GOP senators said they would not vote for the Senate's plan to overhaul Obamacare. President Trump says he's disappointed that Congress hasn't made good on its promise to repeal and replace. And he says he's not going to take the blame.
Let Obamacare fail, it'll be a lot easier. And I think we're probably in that position where we'll just let Obamacare fail. We're not going to own it. I'm not going to own it. I can tell you the Republicans are not going to own it. We'll let Obamacare fail, and then the Democrats are going to come to us and they're going to say, how do we fix it? How do we fix it?
The president also took to Twitter to express his disappointment, saying we will return. AP reporter Matt Friedman has more.
President Donald Trump unleashed a mini tweet storm Tuesday morning in the wake of the collapse of Republican efforts to rewrite the Obama health care law. Trump writing, "Let Obamacare fail and then come together and do a great health care plan. Stay tuned." Vice President Mike Pence echoing the president's tweets.
As the president said with his inexhaustible optimism and determination, stay tuned. We will return. We will rescue the American people from the disastrous consequences of Obamacare.
Earlier, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell conceded that efforts to undo the 2010 law failed.
I regret that the effort to repeal and immediately replace the failures of Obamacare will not be successful. That doesn't mean we should give up. We will now try a different way to bring the American people relief from Obamacare.
McConnell could be forced to work with Democrats if he has any hope of passing a health care bill.
It should be crystal clear to everyone on the other side of the aisle that the core of the bill is unworkable. It's time to move on. It's time to start over.
Matt Friedman, Associated Press.
California's cap-and-trade program will be in place for another 10 years after lawmakers from both parties last night voted to extend the state's signature climate change initiative. The plan puts a limit on carbon emissions and requires polluters obtain permits to exceed that cap, which generates billions of dollars of revenue for the state. Governor Jerry Brown says the program could be a model for other states and nations.
Cap and trade is the efficient program, and that's why the people who know most support it. That's the big picture here. We are reducing the permissible level of CO2 and greenhouse gases that can be emitted, and that cap is going down. The permissible level is getting smaller every year by millions of tons. Now, are we going to do that by an extensive, massive, intrusive regulatory burden that will be 3 to 5 times more expensive and will show up in gasoline prices, food prices, and the effect on various industries? That is not the way to go.
Some, but not all, Republicans are on board with the extension. GOP opponents say it will lead to higher gas and utility prices in the state. As oil and gas companies pay penalties for generating carbon emissions, they say residents will be the ones to ultimately foot the bill.
To put this all on the backs of Californians is wrong. It makes me sad to think about, because I get emails all the time. Every week I get emails from people telling me, senior citizens, saying, I can't, like my electricity bill, I can't afford it. I don't know what I'm going to do. You guys keep raising taxes, and I can't even afford to pay my electricity bill.
Governor Brown's goal for the state is to see a 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2030. San Diego County leaders back transparency in policing. Today, the Board of Supervisors unanimously voted to spend more than $1.1 million to fund body cameras for sheriff's deputies. Supporters say the cameras will help connect the dots in police encounters with the public and show the moments before deputies use force. Others add the cameras themselves can help diffuse tense situations. Sheriff Bill Gore points out the footage would also serve as evidence when members of the public file complaints.
Hopefully now, with body-worn cameras, we'll see what started the force. Was it appropriate force? Was it too much force? It'll tell the story.
Deputies at sheriff stations in Alpine and Ramona will be the first outfitted with the body cams, with the other departments coming in the next few months. Travelers beware. San Diego-San Ysidro border crossing will be closed to southbound cars for more than 2 days in September. KPBS's Deb Welsh has the report.
The 57-hour closure is part of a plan to realign a portion of Interstate 5. It's also the final phase of the $741 million expansion of the San Ysidro Port of Entry, the busiest border crossing in the Western Hemisphere. Starting Saturday, September 23rd at 3 a.m., all cars will be barred from entering Tijuana through San Ysidro until noon on Monday, September 25th. Vehicle traffic into Mexico will be rerouted to the Otay Mesa Port of Entry. Will this be a traffic nightmare, a border-geddon? Authorities are comparing the operation with Carmageddon, when a large section of the busy 405 freeway in Los Angeles was shut down for a weekend in 2011. Deb Welsh, KPBS News.
It's the next step in making recreational marijuana a reality in California, introducing new regulations for edible pot products. Cannabis-infused foods and beverages were on display today at the Capitol. Marijuana products are available in several forms, from teas to cookies. A couple of bills would regulate these products.
What we need to do, and what the state's doing now, is writing rules and creating, making sure it's labeled properly. You want to make sure that you know what's in every dose. You want to make sure each dose is an obvious dose.
Another bill aims to control the way pot is displayed in cartoons and other merchandise. The goal is to protect kids from the temptation of getting stoned. The Veterans Village of San Diego prepares to offer a hand up to homeless veterans this weekend. The 30th annual Stand Down is set for Friday at San Diego High. Volunteers will offer medical care, food, and support. This will be the last stand down for President and CEO Phil Landis. He's retiring this year. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh talks to Landis about the state of homeless veterans in San Diego.
And we've seen efforts by the city to end veterans' homelessness. Yeah. How are those efforts going?
Well, they're going really well, but it's not just the city. I mean, there's a national effort as well. You've got the VA in partnership with HUD putting together permanent housing vouchers, which have been very successful. There are now over 70,000 of these vouchers nationwide. You've got programs for prevention, which have been extraordinarily successful, funded by the VA. In San Diego County alone, we are investing over $7 million a year in prevention programs to keep veterans from entering into homelessness.
And so why hasn't it done the job? Why hasn't it actually ended veterans' homelessness in San Diego? Obviously, this is a community that cares a great deal about veterans.
They do indeed, and there are few cities that care as much as San Diego does about veterans, and homeless veterans in particular. That's a really good question. I mean, we're putting enormous sums of money against this very challenging effort, and the numbers of homeless veterans, remain too high. You get almost as many outflow as you do inflow. And maybe I said that backwards, but we're at a balance point. So every time that you take a Phil or Phyllis veteran and you find them permanent housing and you get them off the street, it seems like another one takes their place. We need to address that in some way.
So you, in many ways, this is the premier Vietnam veterans organization in the country. It started, in the wake post-Vietnam. What do you see its role as being going forward?
Well, VVSD was formed in 1981 by 5 of my contemporaries, Vietnam combat veterans, who were dealing with their own trauma issues. And they formed VVSD for the purpose of helping their brothers. Now it's brothers and sisters, you know, who have endured combat and that are suffering with trauma as a result of that. So the mission never ceases for us. It is evolving to meet emerging needs of our veteran population. We are developing new programs. We are looking at the post-9/11 generation in ways that their needs need to be met as well. We don't see an end to it. We would like to, but unfortunately in the near term, we don't really see our mission as something that is going to end soon.
So this is a bit of a sea change here. Kimberly Mitchell, she's going to be taking over. She had a long Navy career herself, but she's Vietnamese initially. She was an infant in Vietnam and saved as an orphan. Yeah. But this will be the first time, despite that personal story, I mean, this will be the first time that a non-Vietnam veteran is going to be running this organization. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, well, it's about time. You know, I mean, I'm going to be 75. So, you know, life is full of cycles. I mean, our cycle in this mission environment really has taken its time. It's time to bring that younger generation with a different perspective. Look, when I grew up, nobody knew what a cell phone was, right? If you wanted to read, you know, a story, you read it on a book, not a tablet. Life has changed in that regard. So you want someone that's got energy like Kim has and the intellect like she has, and she's mission-driven as much as I am and anyone else I've ever met, you know, to take over the helm of VVSD and to launch our mission and our organization in areas that I would have never thought of.
What was it like back in the day? I know you weren't initially with the organization, but what was the relationship like with the VA back in the day?
Well, that's a great question, and that's why VVSD was founded in the first place. If you recall, my generation, you know, when we came home, it wasn't a very welcoming homecoming. In fact, a friend of mine once said he didn't realize that the enemy was here. And that's a pretty strong statement to make, but that's the way we felt. So in the 70s and the early 80s, almost up until the Gulf War, the first Gulf War in 1990, you know, my generation was thought of in this society as a pariah. So that's a whole different way of looking at the VA. Initially, the VA did not provide the kind of services that they are doing today, but they are today. The services today from the VA are spectacular. I mean, they are really doing what they can. This nation is doing what it can to help its veterans.
A lot of complaints about the VA, a lot of headlines about the VA, but sure, you have to recognize that you've kind of come a long way. So this is a changing of the guard, and how do you feel about that?
Oh, I'm thrilled. I mean, I could not be happier that Kim is going to be at the helm of this organization, and I am truly thrilled about that. This is what life is about. The last thing you want to do is be, you know, the person in the room and everybody in the office is saying, God, when is he going to get out of here, right?
That was outgoing Veterans Village CEO Phil Landis talking to KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh. Landis is retiring from Veterans Village after 20 years. Warm weather for the San Diego region with temperatures only slightly below average along the coast and inland. Erin Calandra has more in tonight's forecast.
Well, the word for the day is humidity. We're going to see lots of humid conditions here the next couple of days, so it's going to make it feel a bit warmer around here than it actually is. Taking a look at our satellite and radar across the county for the last couple of hours, spotty activity still in the mountains, also in the desert, some pop-up thunderstorms in places. Taking a bigger look, well, here we are in Phoenix. We're seeing pop-up thunderstorms as well, really throughout Arizona. Some flash flood warnings there as well, so some dangerous conditions could develop. Tonight here in San Diego, though, 70 degrees for our low temperature. We're going to have areas of low clouds. They're going to burn off around breakfast time, and the sun's going to start coming out throughout the day. For tonight, though, Oceanside, 68 degrees with some clouds. San Diego, 70 degrees. Poway, we're at 69 degrees for our overnight low. In the deserts, Borrego Springs, 78, and Mount Laguna, 62 degrees. Taking a look on our Wednesday. high. It's going to be beautiful here. Not as hot as it has been, but like I said, the humidity is building, so it's still going to feel pretty hot and sticky. Meanwhile, some thunderstorms, monsoons are rolling through the deserts. Taking a look at our tomorrow forecast. For tomorrow, it's going to be gorgeous along the coast. 79 degrees in Oceanside, San Diego 78, Poway 88, Ramona 90 degrees, and we're still in the triple digits here for Borrego Springs. Mount Laguna comfortable 78 degrees. Taking a look at our coast 5-day outlook, we are in the upper 70s to 80 degrees any day this week with mainly sunny skies. Inland, we're in the upper 80s any day as well with lots of sunshine, a couple clouds passing through. In the mountains, much more comfortable here on Wednesday and Thursday in the 70s. Then we pop it up to the 80s on Friday, and we stay there for a couple of days with lots of sunshine. And in the deserts, triple digits, still lots of sunshine. Could see a pop-up thunderstorm or two in places. Make sure you're staying hydrated. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra.
Tomorrow is opening day at the Del Mar racetrack. KPBS North County reporter Allison St. John says horse racing is on the decline nationwide, forcing Del Mar to make some changes.
To get ready for the Del Mar races that start tomorrow, work's been going on around the clock to transform the county fairgrounds into a paddock and a racetrack ready for the horses.
No, a little bit, yeah.
Josh Rubenstein, Chief Operating Officer of the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club, says the venue is a key reason for the Del Mar racetrack's success.
We're very fortunate to have, this beautiful facility right next to the ocean. People want to come out here that aren't necessarily or core horse racing folks.
In fact, Del Mar is bucking the trend in the horse racing industry, which is on a slow and steady decline.
Hollywood Park closed its doors in 2014, so really the major racing in Southern California takes place at Del Mar and Santa Anita, and with that, Del Mar, we added a fall meet.
Do the Dance goes in, and Sobradore Inc., the last one.
But the fall meet at Del Mar has eroded attendance at the summer meet.
Their revenues were down 4% under budget.
Fairgrounds board member David Watson says falling attendance at the races is a long-term trend.
In 2004, the attendance was about 733,000. And with the exception of one little minor blip, it's been steadily going down. And in 2016, the attendance was 534,000. Just a steady decrease in attendance since 2004.
Watson says revenue from the races no longer cover the full $3.3 million cost of annual bond payments on the grandstands, rebuilt in 1991 and recently upgraded. Fitch Rating Agency has not downgraded the bond rating, but analyst Scott Monroe says the racetrack revenues have fallen rapidly in the last 3 years.
What happened last year was racetrack net revenues fell down to $1 million. Prior to that, they had been $2.6 million, and on average, over the last 5 years, they were $5.5 million. So you can see this continued gradual decline in net racing revenues.
But while horse racing revenues have fallen, profits from selling food and drink at the races have gone up. The Thoroughbred Club is now using food and beverage sales, money that used to go to the fairgrounds, to cover the annual debt payment on the grandstands.
When the Del Mar Fairgrounds opened in the 1930s, horse racing provided a lot of financial backing. Now, 80 years later, with horse racing on the decline, the fairgrounds are starting to support the races.
There's a smile on every face.
Josh Rubenstein does not believe subsidizing the racetrack with money that used to be part of the publicly owned fairgrounds budget is a problem.
I look at it a little differently. I look at it as, the food and beverage revenues help us, put on this world-class product that we have. We're fortunate there's a large segment of San Diego that loves coming to Del Mar, that enjoys horse racing.
Watson says this year's racing revenues will be higher because the Breeders' Cup, the Super Bowl of horse racing, is being held here for the first time this fall.
There will be a very positive economic benefit from the Breeders' Cup. The question is, how will that be sustained after 2017?
One of the reasons that people cite for falling attendance at the races is the number of horses that die on the racetrack. The Del Mar Thoroughbred Club has spent millions in the last few years to make sure that this racetrack is the best it can possibly be for the horses.
You know, everybody is on the same page that safety is the actual, absolute #1 priority. So in terms of, getting resources, I mentioned $15 million we've spent since 2007. We spent another $1 million from the off season of last year, to this year in terms of renovating the main track, bringing in some additional consultants. So, we're very pleased with the effort, and we think when the horses are down here that jockeys, trainers, and the horses will really notice a difference.
17 horses died during the Del Mar races last year. Equine agriculture engineer Mick Peterson is co-founder of the Racing Surfaces Testing Laboratory.
We are just taking and bagging samples to go back to the laboratory to be tested.
Del Mar shortened the race meet this year and took an extra 5 days to make the transition between the county fair and the race meet, meticulously grading and reworking the dirt track so horses that train at Santa Anita will hardly notice the difference.
Our goal is to minimize the adaptation they have to make.
Okay, because they're still arriving like 5 days before the race begins, so they don't have a lot of time to adapt to this track.
That's right, but we're doing all our measurements are meant to make this track as similar to Santa Anita as possible. So we'll be going back to Santa Anita to make additional measurements to make sure that everything's as consistent as possible.
A lot is at stake. An estimated $12 million is wagered daily at Del Mar. And while average daily attendance has fallen from nearly 20,000 in the 1980s to about 13,000 now, on opening day tomorrow, more than 40,000 people are expected to fill the stands.
It's time for us to get off the track.
Alison St. John, KPBS News.
Coming up tonight on PBS NewsHour, an all-girls team from Afghanistan is now competing in a U.S. robotics competition after their visas were denied twice by American officials.
They say you can't because it's impossible for girls in Afghanistan can do this, really. That's too hard for us. We say we can do it. We say we can do it. Just give us a chance.
Plus, a look at how a new exhibit in the nation's capital is putting the concept of time in perspective using the sun. That's tonight on PBS NewsHour, starting at 7, right here on KPBS. This week, more than 130,000 people are expected to flood downtown San Diego for Comic-Con. Lots of them opt for public transportation. San Diego Metropolitan Transit System doubles the trolley Green Line service in anticipation of up to 400,000 extra trips. But MTS's Rob Shoup says while the trolley cars will bulge with people, it's all part of the fun.
So it kind of extends the experience. You're down here and you're with all your buddies and you got the cosplayers and it just like flows right onto the trolley and it just continues the fun.
MTS is also getting into the spirit by offering limited edition single or multi-day transit passes, all Comic-Con themed. San Diego's downtown will be filled this week with celebrities, fantastical creatures, and comic book villains, and everyday superheroes like teachers who come to Comic-Con to talk about using pop culture in the classroom. KPBS education reporter Megan Burke says this year that includes educators from Ramona High School.
Comics have always been an entry point for learning to read.
The first thing I ever read was a comic book. And I really didn't read it because I was like 3 or 4 years old. And this is back in the early 60s. And it was Archie. And you looked at Archie and Jughead and Veronica and you put the pictures together and you made the story happen. And this is before we even knew what the alphabet was and how to read.
It seems school book publishers are catching on. Becky Harvey has worked in Ramona Unified Libraries for nearly 3 decades.
I've watched a relatively obscure, small fraction of the content of a library graphic novel grow to at least 20%.
This year, Ramona High School took comic books mainstream. It used a graphic novel by Gareth Hines to teach its 9th graders The Odyssey.
It's a challenging book for students to get through, especially 9th grade students, and so they decided to use the graphic novel in their classroom to try and see how that would change and if that would deepen their understanding of the content?
They do read the actual text alongside with it, or at least excerpts of it. We do close readings of certain passages where they're marking up the text and they're analyzing the language and doing all of those English language arts activities. So this is really just giving them an overview of what the story is, so when they go in and they're reading the actual text, it's easier for them to understand.
Language arts teacher Emily Mailer says she plans to do it again and maybe adopt other graphic novels for her class.
These students who just went through this unit understand the Odyssey better than any of my students ever have before.
Librarian Corey McDonald points out that students across multiple reading levels and abilities.
Just the literature is probably not the best ideal situation because it won't reach all students. Just the graphic novel wouldn't be either, but when you give them multiple representations, you're reaching more students, which I think is our goal as educators.
Ramona High School's Comic-Con panel is scheduled for 12 o'clock Saturday at the Central Library. For more education panels, go to our website, kpbs.org. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
We continue to count down the start of Comic-Con. You can see more coverage online at kpbs.org. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.